This is Anthony Iannarino, and you're listening to In the Arena.
Step into the arena. Give it all that you got. Into the arena. It's time to make it your best shot. Chase the dream and break the scene. Your opportunity is right here. It's right here. It's right now. Welcome to my arena.
I've been a fan of Guy Kawasaki's work since I first read Rules for Revolutionaries over a decade ago, and then right after that, The Art of the Start. Guy's perhaps best known for being one of Apple's earliest employees, where he was responsible for evangelizing and marketing the Macintosh. Now he's best known for being a force of nature when it comes to social media, with over 1 million followers on Twitter and an astonishing 3 million on Google+. Guy is also a prolific writer. Here I talk to Guy about his new book, Ape, author, publisher, entrepreneur, about publishing, and about my struggle deciding whether to use a traditional publisher for the book I'm editing now or to self-publish. I start by asking Guy, who should really use a traditional publisher?
If I were Hillary Clinton and I were going to write my memoirs, would I be thinking about self-publishing? Absolutely not. So, David Beckham, Michael Jordan, Colin Powell, none of those people are going to self-publish because they have the sweet spot of traditional publishing, which is large advances, dedicated team, rush the book to market, get it in the New York Times, get on Oprah, get on 60 Minutes, all that kind of stuff. The problem is that's a very short list of about 500 people in the world who traditional publishing is ideal for. The rest of us, and I include myself in that, it's not clear that traditional publishing is the way to go. And the primary reason is the facts and the factors that made traditional publishing work a few years or maybe decades ago now are no longer true. And these factors include limited shelf space, limited expertise in terms of editing and design, limited sort of bandwidth for people to read. I think there was less reading being done. Limited information in terms of how do I judge what a good book is. So in the old days, where there was limited press time, limited shelf space in a physical bookstore, people didn't know what to read, so they had to use the imprint of a publisher as a proxy, and you had to get printed books to retailers. Lots of factors were necessary for traditional publishers to be able to add value. I think most of those factors are gone now. So, and yet the equation seems to be 10% for the author and 90% for the publisher. One of the great ironies today is if you're a novice author, one of the things a publisher asks you is, well, how are you going to market your book? What is your social media platform? How many followers do you have? How many page views on your blog? And if you think about it, in the old days, one of the reasons why you went to a traditional publisher is because they had the marketing platform. So this is kind of ass backwards at this point. So, you're telling me you want 90% of the deal, but I'm going to do the marketing? Something's wrong with this equation.
That I've had that conversation with a couple publishers, and the tough thing for somebody in my spot, and you wrote the book Ape for people like me in my mind. I've got a lot to say. I've got a point of view. I've done a lot of writing, and now I'm condensing some of it, and I'm going to put borders around it in the form of a book. But when I talk to other authors, no one's happy with the marketing, and the author still goes into this idea thinking that the publisher's going to market the book for them, and that's what's going to sell the book.
That is the great lie of the year 2012 and 13. That is the equivalent of the check is in the mail.
Yeah, I realize the only reason I've gotten calls, and I don't have the following that you have, but I've got, I've got 50,000 views a month on a blog, and I've got 25,000 Twitter followers and a big social media presence. And I realize that the phone is only ringing because they look at me and say, "There's a book salesman."
Well, in a sense, can you blame them? But in another sense, okay, then like let's make the split 50-50 or 60-40, but why is it still 90-10? That's the question.
Yeah, I hear you saying that the role that the publishers play in the future is going to be very different. I think it is too. If they still have one, it's going to be for people with a big audience and the ability to, get a couple $1 million advance and sell something everywhere.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of people sort of in my space, and they've got great ideas. They've got a lot to share. They can create value, but they absolutely hate selling and they hate promoting themselves. It makes them feel dirty to do that kind of work. And they want to write a book. But in my opinion, and you know a lot more about this than I do, I don't think publishers want to touch somebody who's not willing to go and market and sell and self-promote. Do you think self-publishing is the right answer for people like that?
Probably not, because if they hate promotion and marketing, and so they don't want to go with a traditional publisher who expects them to do that, do they think they're going to write this and self-publish it and it's going to magically sell without any effort? If anything, a self-publisher is going to be more out there doing more marketing, not less.
They think it's going to be a business card, I think.
A business card?
Yeah, they think it's going to serve the purpose of, look, I have proven to you that I have the ability to create value because I've given you something that traps it in these borders.
Well, if we go back to chapter 1 of my book, I say that the reason to write a book is because you have something to say or it's an intellectual challenge. But a good reason to write a book is not because you want more speaking and more consulting. You may get more speaking and consulting because you write a great book, but nobody buys a book in order to help you get more speaking and consulting. And so I think that from the very get-go, the initial motivation is wrong in the scenario you just painted.
Yeah, I got another question about that too. I'm looking at books right now, and I looked at Tom Peters today on Amazon.
Yes.
And he's been publishing little books, and
Yes.
I don't know how many pages they are, but it seems to me that that's probably the right size for a lot of books. And I'm sitting here talking to my office. I'm surrounded by 2,000 books, but so
Okay.
many of them, probably the idea was 100 pages. But because we used to have to go to all the trouble to get a publisher, it's 240 because there has to be something substantial there. But most of them don't need that kind of page length or width to develop that idea. Do you think books are going to change in the form that we read them in?
Well, certainly they're going to change in the form in the sense of ebook.
Yeah.
And with an ebook, it doesn't really matter how long it is because it's not like it has to end in multiples of 16, and it's not like there's certain limits of paper and thickness and all that. You are, however, talking about the opposite end. You're talking about how short can it be, right? And so, can you write a short book of 100 pages and sell it for $1? Why not? I think that opens up a whole new world where you might not have been able to effectively sell a paper-based book that's only 100 pages long for various reasons. But can you sell a 100-page ebook where the transfer fee electronically is basically zero? So the answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, it seems to me. Haven't you read books though where you 50 pages in, you've got the full idea, and then the rest of it sort of was padded around it?
Well, I could make the case that that's true of 99% of the nonfiction books.
Yeah.
Somebody might even say that about mine. But well, they can't say that about Ape because Ape is really a how-to. And so if you read the first 50 pages, the next 250 pages say something completely different. It's not like I'm repeating myself and saying, well, you need to blink, you need to tip, you need to cross the chasm. I don't think you can charge me of that one.
No, I wouldn't. And, it really is a how-to manual, which is why I'm having so much angst over reading it, is because I'm reading it going, yeah, I could do this. And it makes sense for me. I think it makes sense for somebody in my position.
Well, do you have the choice? Is someone giving you an advance and a contract and you have the ability to turn that down, or are you theoretically saying, what if I had the choice?
No, I have the choice because I have two people who have asked for the book.
Okay.
But yeah, I have the choice, and I haven't signed a contract with anybody. I have promised, I went out and got my own editor because I
Yep.
wanted to control the content of the book and edit it and have it line edited and done because I wanted this time to decide what I wanted to do. So I have the choice. I wanted to go with a publisher, but then you guys sent me your book. you, you threw a wrench in this whole thing.
I feel bad for you. I'm feeling your pain.
I don't know. You wrote it to do that. You wrote it to cause me this angst.
How big is your advance?
Not big enough for me to worry about.
One conclusion you could say is, forget our situation for a second, but there are many people who spend 6-9 months pursuing this editor, pursuing this publisher, pursuing somebody, agent to take them on. And after all that, they get a $10,000 advance. I could make the case that if you did a really effective Kickstarter or IndieGoGo campaign, you could raise 10 grand in 2 weeks with total certainty, not sucking up to anybody for 6 months. So, IndieGoGo and Kickstarter is better than traditional publisher who's only going to give you 10 grand.
Yeah, and then people don't buy a lot of books. I think for most authors, I've heard that 6,000 is a really good selling nonfiction book. So if they get a couple bucks, you're talking about another 12, and then they've got to pay back in advance, right?
And so they basically break even.
Yeah, I can't understand the finances behind this. There's no great motivation, I think, as an author there.
Well, again, I would not be so harsh as to say there is no great motivation. It may be that the motivation that you started with was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have fulfilled not you personally, but people have fulfilled the prophecy of the wrong motivation.
My motivation is, I've been sharing ideas for free on the internet for a long time. I want to give people a book so they have the souvenir. And I know to go to a publisher and say, well, I'd really like to give the book away, and they're going to have no more use for me as soon as I say that. I'm more interested in spreading the idea than I am making $12,000.
Well, then I hate to tell you, but, for sure you should self-publish because...
Damn it, Guy.
I mean... You have the ability with self-publishing to give it away electronically so far and so wide and so easily that if you were with a traditional publisher, they would have an aneurysm if you want.
I believe that's true. Let me ask you this. You've got a huge following. I don't know how big it is. It's measured in millions, though, right?
Yes.
And it's easy for you to leverage that to promote your book. And you say something interesting in the book to me. And I think a lot of people get this wrong. You say that publishing is something you do in parallel.
Yes.
Tell me what that means, and speak to first-time authors about what are they supposed to be doing to succeed with a book.
Okay, so whether you're a first-time author who has, hit the trifecta of traditional publishing and gotten a big advance and, all the good stuff, or you are literally self-publishing, living on soy sauce and rice, my big recommendation to you is the day you start writing is the day you start preparing your marketing platform. And if you're a traditional publisher, with a traditional publisher, do not believe for a second that your traditional publisher is going to have this great platform that's going to take care of you. At the end of the process, you are responsible for your own success. And so this means that the day you boot Word is the same day you get on Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and LinkedIn and Google Plus, and you start building a reputation and a niche so that when your book is available, you can, in fact, market it to an existing base. And most authors don't make that realization, and it is key. Your book is not going to sell just because it's out there.
Yeah, I think that, this toolkit has changed so much. Now you've got the ability to build that platform and stand on it long before you get to a book, which is what I think is interesting. It's flipped. And for those of us that are game enough to go out and build that, we've got an audience, and the publisher, which earlier you said brings, the marketing piece and that platform, they seem to be the ones lacking the platform now.
Well, I think a very good analogy for a self-publisher is to consider himself or herself an artisanal craftsman. So just like the artisanal baker or the artisanal brewer or winemaker, you need to think that you are a craftsman controlling the process from beginning to end. So, if you were an artisanal, let's say, brewer, okay, I don't think that anybody who is making themselves an artisanal brewer would say, okay, so this is how it's going to work. I am a craftsman. I'm going to brew a batch of beer. I'm going to put it in bottles, and magically stores will be calling me and people will be driving to my brewery to start buying my beer. Seriously, what brewer, winemaker, or baker would be thinking, oh, I bake my muffins and magically all these markets are going to call me for distribution. So, if you're realistic, that once you baked it, or brewed it, or wine made it, now you hit the road. And that's the same thing with an author. So why would an author think, I write the book and magically Amazon's going to call me and Barnes & Noble's going to beg me to put it on their shelves and people are going to be hammering at me to get copies? My biggest problem is, can I print them fast enough? You're hallucinating.
Let me ask you one more question. You got time for one more?
I got time for as many as you want.
Let's go back in time to pre-enchantment.
Okay.
Having done What the Plus and now Ape, and having learned the lessons from those two books, would you have done enchantment the same way, or would you have done it yourself if you could go back and have a do-over on that?
In a perfect world, I would like to control the electronic rights of a book. I would still sell the paper rights to a traditional publisher, assuming that the ebook is not gated by the traditional publishing shipment of the paper rights. That is a huge assumption that is probably false.
Yeah.
And it would also take a large advance. So, I believe that there are only two kinds of authors. One author wants and lusts and fantasizes about a big advance, and the other author is a liar. $1 million advances. So don't get me wrong. If tomorrow somebody calls up from Penguin, Putnam, Random House, Simon & Schuster, McGraw-Hill and says, Guy, we want you to write a book. Here's $2 million. Hella freaking yeah, man. I'm back in traditional publishing.
Is that phone call going to come in?
Not likely. I'll wait while you take 12 months with your stupid process to get the book out. I mean, if I'm sitting on $2 million advance, take as long as you like. I don't care.
Yeah, it's interesting because you learn over time. So if the situation was right, you might go with a publisher, but mostly it's hard to get that situation because how do you divorce the electronic book rights from the paper rights now that so much is being consumed, on a Kindle or an iPad or some other device?
Well, actually, I've done it with What the Plus. McGraw-Hill has the paper rights, and I have the electronic rights.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but having said that, that is highly unusual. And, can I tell you something? In a sense, if you find a publisher who's willing to give you or let you keep the e-rights and just buy the paper rights, I would make the case that publisher is so stupid you wouldn't want to work with them.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Why would you give up that when at some point in history, a publisher stopped printing a book because it didn't make sense to keep printing it. But now, because it's electronic, it could be print on demand or somebody downloads it. That's going to be out forever. You never have to give up your catalog if you're a publisher, right?
Can I tell you something that my experience with print on demand, primarily CreateSpace and Lightning Source, is stunning. I mean, with CreateSpace, we approved the file on Christmas night, and on the 27th, we physically had the proof copy.
Wow.
Okay, I mean that's what you call print on demand.
Serious on demand.
Yeah, and so this thought that traditional publishing you need like 10-week delivery time for printing and all that. Now maybe they'll print 10,000, and maybe they'll be $2 instead of $5. So yeah, maybe you'll make it 50% cheaper, 60%, 70% cheaper. But the speed in which you can get something today, I had a potential sale of 500 copies of Ape that had to be in Florida on like the 10th of January, right? And up till about the 4th or 5th of January, it could have been ordered print on demand and gotten there. And to me, that is just remarkable. I don't know how they do this kind of stuff. And so, hallelujah. Yeah, the big part of the value of a traditional publisher goes away when you can just place an order on CreateSpace or Lightning Source, and 4 days later you can have 500 books in Florida.
That's amazing. You have been through all kinds of books in the way of topics. You've gone from one thing to the next, sort of maybe, and it looks to me like following you. If something pops up and catches you and you get hooked, and then you just take it all the way down the path.
Essentially, that's my path, yes.
What are you hooked on now? What's next for you?
Right now, I am simply trying to market the hell out of Ape. So I don't have anything else in the fire. Ape was kind of just a coincidence that I fell in love with Google Plus. So I wrote What the Plus, and I self-published What the Plus. And then self-publishing What the Plus, I learned how difficult publishing was. So that's why I wrote it. It was not planned. It's not like I have this 1 year, idea about what to do. So, I don't know. Tomorrow's another day, and I may find something that and then I'll write another book.
Something will hook you, I'm sure. We'll see another book. I'll end here. This is exactly what I expected. I started off this before we started the recording telling you that in my mind, you're this mild-mannered, unopinionated, soft-hearted guy. And then, of course, when I talk to you, I hear what everybody else gets, and that's the unadulterated, passionate Guy Kawasaki. And I appreciate that. Thanks so much for your time.
Very welcome.
I have the feeling I'm going to be struggling with the implications of this interview long after you've listened to the recording. Do check out Guy's book, Ape. You can find it on Amazon.com and probably every place else. And you can find me at thesalesblog.com. While you're there, do make sure you sign up for my newsletter. That's it for this week. I look forward to seeing you next week in the arena.